From physical sets to immersive virtual worlds, AI is reshaping production, unlocking limitless possibilities. Dive into our panel discussion on AI and virtual production.
Thank you all for being here today. We have an incredible group of panelists here with us today, and we're going to get to hear from them for a good amount of time, which I think we'll get to dive really deep. We're going to have some good discussions. Before we do so, I think we have a couple of videos that we're going to show of work from some of the people that you're seeing on stage here. What an exciting way to kick off this panel. I think part of what's really interesting about being here, being in this space, and talking about AI is we're not just talking about a revolution in AI and entertainment. We're talking about AI converging with changes in virtual production. And we saw some of those clips from work that Magnopus has done. We're seeing some of the work that Kubrick has done. And we're going to talk about a lot of the work that James and Robert have done, being very foundational in the virtual production space. But today we get to talk about something interesting, which is if we're talking about moving towards virtual production and a more computational, potentially, model of filmmaking, what does it mean when AI becomes part of that computational picture? So we're going to dive into that a little deeper, but to start with, James, starting with you, can you talk a bit about your background, what's interesting to you about the space with VP and AI, and we can go down the line here and do some intros.
Thank you. First of all, thank you very much for inviting me on the panel. I really appreciate it. I really admire your work and everything that you do. I have about 15 years in VFX. I've been watching Rob Legato make history and sort of riding in his wake for a lot of that. We went off and did about 7 years at Disney, informing Disney that we can do a lot of this stuff with a computer now. Then I went off to Netflix for about 4.5 years, where we helped stand up post-production as they did their first originals. And then I was asked to be the post-production supervisor of The Mandalorian, which is good work if you can get it. And so that's where I fell in love with virtual production. Me and a gentleman, Ben Baker, we met on an ETC project called Fathead, and we founded a company called Mesh. And Mesh is about virtual production line producing, but it also, we chose virtual production because it's tangential to and accessible to all the other things that are happening in terms of entertainment and storytelling, and that's me.
Yeah, so I'm AJ Sciutto. I'm from Magnopus. I've been at Magnopus for 7 years. Before that, I was at Sony ImageWorks for 8 years. It's also 15 years in the digital realm of filmmaking. Jumped into virtual production on The Lion King, found an opportunity to enable creatives to be hands-on again with the digital filmmaking process. Fell in love with that all over again, and then been pushing virtual production forward ever since with Rob, with James, and been finding new avenues in which to play, and AI is one of those avenues, and it's really exciting.
Hello, my name is Pinar Seyhan Demirdag. My background is in art and creative technologies. Artificial neural networks found me in 2017. I was minding my own business. I received an email from Google, a Brain Lab in Zurich, in collaboration with Google Arts and Culture in Paris, saying that they discovered, I'm paraphrasing, they discovered a new model for generative AI called future visualization that is built up on the infamous generative AI model called Deep Dream. And the result of their research ended up looking like my body of work as an artist. And they're not an art company, but I was an artist. And they summoned me in their lab and asked me what we can do together. So ever since, I'm obsessed and possessed by generative AI. And thanks to my loving life and work partner, Gary Kepke, who's here, since 2020, we founded Seyhan, our company that developed Kubrick that you have watched behind me, with the sole mission of becoming the industry's destination for its adoption of generative AI.
I'm sadly older than everyone here in the panel, which disturbs me very much. I've been doing this for a long time. My short little history is I saw The Godfather, I said I want to do that. I have no idea what that is. I still don't, but I still want to do it. And I started not being in visual effects. I started wanting to direct and write and photograph, and I was always enamored with that. So every tool that I made for me to kind of maybe is being used to this day was based on me trying to be as good as other people that I knew I was not. And so it was a tool, like if you're not tall enough, you build a ladder so you can reach the same heights. But that's ultimately what I did. So, I without going into my full history, after I did a film called Aviator, I worked in this field where I was operating the camera. I had one other artist, and we were creating the crash scene in Aviator. And I said, this is a really cool way of working because I could shoot and I could edit it and I could build a sequence that I have never shot before in a Martin Scorsese film without him knowing that I'm an idiot and I don't know how to do any of that shit. But I taught myself how to shoot a scene that I've never shot before. I introduced it to Jim Cameron. I said, if you now fund me, because you have a lot of money and I don't, and build a motion capture stage, you could steady cam, you could direct the actors at the same time. And we essentially built what the virtual system is now, only way perfected now, without a lot of bugs, and instead of gluing things together, things are made specifically for it. But the idea has always been the same. And then when I go back in history and study it, realize we've been doing sort of virtual work all the time, depending on how you change the definition. Like a script is virtual filmmaking because you're writing something that isn't built yet, putting in someone's imagination, taking pictures, storyboard frames, models that they used to do for production design. So we have just now made the tools better and more accessible, more democratic for other people to emerge as major filmmakers where they otherwise might not have. How was that?
That was great.
I made all that up. I don't know what I'm talking about.
I think in the context of having such great voices here with us, we also just had a great panel leading in with Cynthia and Paul and Victor of the impact of AI. Before we jump into kind of some of the specifics of what are the things that are up in the air with what does it mean for what does it mean for production, what does it mean for filmmaking and storytelling, what are the things just from your experience with AI for each of the panelists here that have been interesting to you, that are intriguing to you, that are most exciting to you when you see this convergence of production and AI?
James?
The go-to. Sorry about the feedback. Look, this is a disruptive time. I've had a career long enough to go through a couple of these, technologically speaking. And really, my whole role has been to be the straw man. I have always done the job that will be replaced. I have always been automated out of my job. It's just the way it is. So I really want to say that the experience I've been having with AI, it reminds me exactly of when they started digitizing film, right? And so I would like to just encourage everyone to spend as much time looking for the opportunity when they look at these tools as they do fear-mongering. Because it's okay to get together and say, oh no, the sky is falling. I tend to think the sky is not falling. But the less time you spend on engaging with these tools, the less time and the less knowledge you'll have to see the opportunity. Because I can absolutely tell you there are shows out there that are going to be inspired by these technologies. And if we don't look up and find out where those shows are, where those directors are, we'll miss an opportunity.
So, Rachel, my job is a producer. I've been a producer on film sets for 10 years. And as somebody who's in charge of making sure that his team is productive and efficient, I look at this push into AI as a productivity multiplier. I know for a long time, everyone was really concerned that the computer was going to take away people's jobs in the workforce, right? If the computer was going to be that thing that replaced everybody. But what we found was computing was a productivity multiplier. We found that people can do their jobs more efficiently in whatever sector they were in. And I'm seeing that in this now. Yes, there's fear of what it could be, but in the meantime, and after playing with a few things, it's pretty good. It's not great. Like it'll get you 60% of the way there, but that 60% used to take days or weeks. Now it can take minutes. And for me, if I can make my team that much more efficient and productive, I could do more in less time. And to me, that's kind of the magic bullet.
So on top of that, I would, of course, not want to repeat what they said. What interests me the most in AI revolution is actually its humanity, how it will remind us of our humanity. As a creative technologist, the language that I strive to speak the best is humanity. What is humanity? Have we ever asked ourselves? It is our creativity, it is our ingenuity, our ability to manifest our dreams. Under no circumstance, any machine can do that. So what excites me the most is that while working with the machines that are designed to get the dirty, dull, dangerous, difficult, unfun, tedious parts of our workflow out of our shoulders, so we can go from concept to camera in minutes and very soon in real time, we will be remembering who we are. We are creators. We're not some repetitive robotic slaves that are constantly doing the same thing over and over. This is the role of AI in our life.
I guess for me, I've always used a form of artificial intelligence my entire career because I always have some bizarre idea and I need some genius to tell me how to do it. So I've always sought, like, show me the smartest person in the room and let me give him the worst assignment and let me see if you can do it. And so, the fact that it's now shifted where some of that burden is now something that you could do in a machine to speed up my process, it's only good for me. I mean, I know the bad things. We talk about that all day, what could go wrong. Right now, that's more science fiction than science fact, I think. We're afraid of how, we're afraid of people taking over our lives. But if you're secure, you invite what's good. It's like, show me something good. Show me something better than what I can do. And I'll choose whether I think it fits my narrative or what I want to do as an artist. And I know that there's no way you can actually replace the chemical mix that you have as an artist, where you wake up one day and you have a better idea, you rub into somebody, even if you're pissed off at them, they change your point of view, and you talk to an actor and they don't want to do what you asked them to do, and the director doesn't like your idea, and all of a sudden you have to come up with another alternative. That is hard to quantify. That is impossible to get at. So there's no fear that something is going to take that away, because you'd have to be able to be human and be able to respond to all kinds of input, and then be surprised sometimes when it's great, when it's beyond what you could do. And I know enough, I'm secure enough to know that I don't know lots of stuff. And I welcome it, I want it. Please teach me. The people who hate it or are fearful of it are insecure about their own talent. And if you're secure about your own talent, you will invite the best. If you want to play tennis, you'll get the best tennis partner you can find, because you like to be better. And So I think that, there's a lot of misconceptions about it. There's a lot of, misuse of what they think it can do. It can't write your script. It could write a mediocre script. And then if that happens, then everybody in the world could write the same mediocre script because you could access the same software program. But it's the human alteration, that twist, that maybe even the misinterpretation of an idea that creates genius. So I'm actually kind of good about it.
I think that piece about humanity is really important, and it touches on this idea of AI not as a replacement, but as an assistive tool, right? Coming alongside and doing, some of the drudge work maybe, while leaving us space to be more creative. And AJ, I feel like you started touching on this, but this idea of production is already a collection of choices. And when we use virtual production, we're making some of those choices about using new tools and incorporating new tools within our workflow. I'm curious, just across the panel, how do you think about the role of AI within production? Is it assistive, or we're seeing also these new emerging models of AI kind of from the top down with procedural systems for generation of content. We're seeing AI from the bottom up with generative content and script to screen models, which are kind of reinventing the workflow in general. Which of those pieces are you? There's definitely a convergence between them, but which pieces are most exciting to you? Which of those ones are you most interested in digging deeper into?
So I have a confession to make. We got the questions for this panel a couple days ago.
Well, I didn't get them.
Sorry, Robin. You must have missed it. I put in my notes. I had a little document going. And then this morning, I figured it would be kind of poetically meta to type those questions into Bard, which is Google's AI generative thing. And the answers it came back with were pretty okay. Like I said, they're about 60% of the way there. It had some good points, a lot of things that I kind of already covered, but it had some things like fundamentally wrong. And going back to Rob's point about the creative process, like it said that this is going to be a useful tool for pre-production, post-production, and production, in which production, it was going to start making decisions about lighting and cinematography and set design. And it's just like fundamentally wrong. Like that's the creative process that I've witnessed Rob make, where there's spontaneity in the camera decisions, or spontaneity in the decisions you make as a creative on set to find the moment, to find the action. So from that perspective, I think that there's a lot to be learned. To actually answer your question about what tools are being used and where, the pre-production process is ripe for kind of a creative foundation boost in which a filmmaker, a creative, a production designer, a scriptwriter can use the tool to help solve a problem, to get them to a certain point faster. It's not going to write the final thing. Like Rob said, a script is not going to be very good. It's going to be about 60% of the way of where you need it. But it will get you to that kind of result a little bit faster. Same in post-production. In post-production, utilizing it for slap comps and VFX editorial to replace a character with a CG character. There's going to be some fuzzy edges. There's going to be some things that aren't going to be final pixel quality, but it can represent an idea in a way that allows that idea to be visible to the downstream departments in a way that we used to take months and weeks to get to that point.
It's such a broad thing about what AI is, and the useful parts still never address the creative portion that it's being useful for. Like there's a thing, I think, was it Motion AI? Is that what it's called? With the iPhones? Move AI. Okay, I'm selling Move AI. At any rate, you have now what used to be a very difficult process of doing motion capture and getting it into the computer and all that stuff. You use like 6 iPhones, so it's using AI to recognize what the person's doing without wearing the tennis balls or the ping pong balls and all that. But it doesn't make up what the person's doing. It just knows from history of what it's been taught how it moves, and that, the arm must be moving here and there. So you can use that motion. That doesn't mean that motion's very good. It only is good because you directed the person to do it, and hopefully that fits the bill and tells the story. So it's incredibly useful for stuff like that, where that's tedious work that would take weeks to just get to the same result. And so let it help you. Let it help you get to that result sooner, so you can say, like what I say is like, holy shit, that sucks. That's really bad. We've got to do that again. But I could do that 2 weeks earlier. than I could before. So that's the iteration part is what is exciting about it. I can make mistakes and fix them before hopefully anybody sees them.
If rotoscoping were to disappear from the face of Earth, how many of you would regret it?
No one.
I know that I will agree with you because I know that we think the same. I just would like to give a vision. I would like to picture a vision in your heads. I would like to bring you with the speed of AI development where a day equals a year in research. I think we're looking into, I'm exaggerating, 3 years to the following scenario. How many of you have watched Avengers Endgame? Do you remember the scene with Tony Stark figuring out time travel with a voice to 3D, with a holographic vision board? That's exactly where we're going. We are currently in between technology, the cassette tape, where we have to type still words on a screen. This is exactly where we're going, where we will be ideating, we will be creating before we carry it to the camera, before we execute our vision. We will be ideating, making together with these very fast tools, so then again, our concept can manifest in real time in front of us.
So you keep hearing a theme, right? So there's always a slow part, right? So this technology is moving, eliminating certain slow parts. The first cut problem is going away. You know, that's a big block. The blank page, well, it's much easier to respond, you know, to we call this working in a negative space. You know, you say, tell me a story about this, or give me some marketing material about this. And you look at it, and it's much easier to respond to something once the first cut thing has been overcome. Look to audio. Audio, again, a lot of these things happen in audio first. Adam Schiff, our representative, is getting phone calls from sound people who are saying, how do I take someone's voice profile, which is now a thing, right? And how do I register that at the Library of Congress? Right now, this technology is going to move faster, much faster than the legislation, but the ball's going, right? But you're going to have a world already, I think, very, very, very soon, where Tom Cruise's voice will be the temp on the editorial soundtrack, right? And then it'll be up to Tom's people whether or not that's good enough to use for the show. He may be too busy, but it's going to be good enough that, you know, you won't be able to tell if it's Tom or not, right? So, I mean, that's going to happen now.
Actually, it's happening with advertising, with Messi. There's a company to whom celebrities rent their faces, so Messi and his team can make money while he's sleeping.
There's a company now which is taking your registration for your face, how your face gets from here to here, right? And taking all of that fidelity of emotion. That's going to be a facial profile. We're already seeing movement profiles. This is nothing to be afraid of. This is very useful. And I was in a conversation with someone just the other day who told me that this enables them in a certain way, and they use the phrase art without permission. That's what I think is enabling this room, is you're allowed and can and able to create art without permission.
The previous panel, we're talking about copywriting and the fact that you're able to get all this stuff offline and use it. But, you know, we used to call that research. Every time I do a film, I go through the internet and I go find images and things and I put them together in a PDF document, and I find obscure stories and other things that just, now that I have a kind of a North Star that I'm following to tell the story, things start to appear that are interesting. I don't even know what they are, but I don't question it. I just stick them all in a book. That's kind of what AI is doing for us, but we used to call it research, so it seemed benign, and now it seems like it's evil, but it's ultimately that. Now, I don't sell it as a package. I create the illusion that's all my idea, and then I sell it to somebody else to use it, but it's actually there to enhance my work, and everybody steals from everyone. You know, every written piece of material has been influenced by the thousands of things we've heard, the photographs or the thousands of pictures we have. We're not even aware of it. But when we have inspiration, it's like, oh, now I know how to do it. It's like I probably saw that image in a movie I liked, and I just don't remember what it was. But so now it's a more organized version of that. So it sounds evil, but we've been doing it for literally as long as man's been alive.
I've seen people pay homage to your work, actually.
And they didn't pay me for it?
No, hey, I'm just saying, I've seen it.
Do you have
I'm
names?
seeing it.
Do you have names, addresses, anything?
You know where it is.
I think that piece of pattern recognition is fundamentally we as humans are pattern recognition machines, right? Like we are recognizing patterns in the world around us. When we are being creative, we're building on the creativity that we've seen in the past. So there's this idea of AI is kind of extending that, right? We have increased optionality. We have increased ideas now available to us. But part of it is I think that these tools are still evolving. So a lot of the tools that are really popular now, when we're seeing things like Stable Diffusion, all these image generation kind of tools that are available are very bottom up tools. So they're there to kind of give a lot of generative output, maybe when you put text-based input in, when you have the script to screen model, but you don't necessarily have a lot of parameters of control. So when you're playing with the output, you're playing with the parameters of the engine. And Pinar, I'm sure you're really familiar with this, is doing a lot of prompt engineering work with Kubrick, that you're trying to figure out what will work within the engine to get me the best response. But often as creators, we're not really, we don't necessarily want that level of control. We want the control of the characters in the scene. We want control of the environment directly. We want the recognition of the objects within a scene and then being able to modulate those elements. And so there are things like control net with Stable Diffusion that give more control. But I think part of it is like we're seeing this gradient of tools, right? So there's generative tools where you're playing with the engine. There are tools that are very top down where you're playing with procedural systems. And then there are things that are kind of within the mid ground of types of tools. Pinar, starting with you, I guess, how do you see these types of creativity that are now required with, for example, control at the engine level when you're playing with prompt engineering? How does that look different from maybe a type of creativity where you're like, I want my character to do this. Here are different options of what that character might do.
Yeah, again, like I said earlier, it's simply part of human progress. For me, every tool that we are subject to offers us the possibility to open new doors of perception and imagination in our minds. For example, before Twitter came around, I'm pretty sure that it's debatable that if we knew really how to think in self-expression in 160 characters. So just like the tools of, I remember the first time I ever worked with generative AI, it was 2017. And then Google gave me this tool where I could create like art with. I remember it was like love. I mean, love in a sense that a part of my brain was unlocked for the first time that I didn't even know it existed. So by dancing with the machine after like 1 month, only then I could get the gist of how to use it. And only then I could really create really surprising discoveries. For example, the tool that Google made with me was called Infinite Patterns. And basically it involved placing an image as an input, pushing some sliders, putting some numbers, and getting a very artistic result in return. But nothing was done by the machine. Everything was done by me. The machine was there to facilitate to my artistic taste because I could stop the iterations whenever I wanted. And only after working with the machine a month in full, I realized that it had some basic understandings of these patterns that is repeated in nature. You know how, for example, our hands look like roots inside of our palms, look like leaves, how lightning looks like the branches of a tree in our lungs. So I use my brain and I'm like, what if I input an image of a Buckminster Fuller molecule? And in return, I got a snake skin in return. So I was like, because I knew how it was thinking. So I knew I wanted to get a snake skin, but instead of putting a snake, because I know that it wouldn't get there, I instead put a Buckminster Fuller molecule because I know as the human that they're the same thing. So the AI tools that we are currently using will only invite us to think differently and more holistically and more expandably.
If you put in a snake, would you get like a congressman or a senator?
What? Say it?
I said, if you put in a snake, would you get like a congressman or a senator? No political jokes. I don't know.
James, I think this is related a bit to some of the things we've talked about, because what Pinar is talking about is a model where if you're dancing with the engine, you're going to iterate a lot. You're going to get all this content out that's now you're organizing, now you're finding new ways of synthesizing and leading through a workflow. what is the role that you're seeing of like data emerging within this process and like media management?
I have been following the data since day one. The first scanned images, 2048 by 1556, 10-bit sitting on file, 12.78 megabytes. It's all still in there, right? We were able to move forward and know things if we know the data, right? So understand the data that we're working with here. Understand what makes up open up UEFN, right? Understand the problems that you have collaborating in the space, taking an asset from one location and bringing it into another. You focus on these issues, then a lot of things will be made available to you. You'll understand how to use these tools in a very pragmatic way, right? You'll understand that polygonal count matters, right? And some people already know this, so they're writing tools to make sure that polygon count is sort of adheres to a template or a spec, so we can interchange, right? But my whole career has been about understanding the data flow. It's sort of like the transportation department for any film, right? Those trucks are all parked and everyone knows where to go. The data, I've been the digital transportation department for the film industry for 25 years. Try making a movie without those guys. It's tough.
I noticed in my own playing with AI, I'm not very good at it either, but I'm not an artist. I can't draw at all. And when I go to the text thing and I describe something, like, it's a pretty good drawing. I mean, like, because I'm not an artist, so I wouldn't even know if it's a bad drawing, but it's really good for me. But if I ask it to do something that I know about, then I kind of don't like it. It's like, well, I'm very frustrated. So I only get part of what it is, and then maybe they go back and redescribe. And it reminds me when I first started in the visual effects industry, and we'd have a lot of digital artists, and you think you're explaining something very clearly, and you thought that everybody nodded their head and they get it, and it comes back and it's like, what were you listening to? What is that? And occasionally something would come back that was not what I described that would be better, but more frequently than not, it was a misunderstanding of what I had in my head. And so I think that if you are good at drawing, you might get frustrated with it drawing for you. And if you're frustrated about camera work, you'd be frustrated by what camera choice it made, because that's what you know, and that's what your individuality and your art is. So I think that it fills in, like for me, if I needed to make a quick drawing of a car in a street, fine, do that. But if I now want to show how I would shoot a car commercial, I have to put a car in Unreal, get a camera, and photograph it in the same light source, the time of day I want to shoot it, to express how I would do it, not that a shot is done that way. So I think it's all individual to each person, whatever their expertise is. I'm sure if you're a writer and you throw in something and it comes back, it's probably pretty good if you're not a writer. But if you are a writer and you want to be Ernest Hemingway, you probably look at that and are very critical of it.
Yeah.
I think this brings us to kind of an interesting question, especially already within the virtual production space, now even more interesting in the context of AI, on what the role of the art department is. Because if you're talking about virtual production with, developing a virtual world, doing virtual scouting within that space to find the angles that you want, or if you're talking about, the transmedia approach of building that virtual world, so now you can have, maybe some version of it is in some version of it is the background of your filming, some version of it becomes your virtual reality experience, some version of it becomes augmented reality assets, right? That's a very world-centric approach to creating content that places the world at kind of a really key element within the filmmaking process. Now that we have the ability to generate art in new ways and have these visuals as kind of leading the process potentially, or being a kind of higher fidelity images at an earlier stage in the process, how do you see the role of the art department evolving, or the role that it plays within production?
I think it's the same. It's always been the same. They've created the worlds that they live in, and from the beginning of the movie business with sets and matte paintings and all the rest. So it hasn't really changed. You just have better tools to do it. And now more people who are not artists can help. Like I can make up a landscape in Unreal that I think looks pretty okay to me, or good enough for me to shoot with. I couldn't have done that before, but I work with somebody, Audrey Ferrara, on Lion King and Jungle Book. And she's a brilliant artist and can create any landscape, and just has that right touch of how many leaves to put over here and what kind of tree should be here. And it was a beautiful set to shoot in. So I realized that somebody is very talented at it compared to me, who could just be a workman, like get something that if I went to like a park, I could say, yeah, I'll shoot here. And the randomness of what was there is what I'm going to use, much like the randomness of what I could make up is what I would use. But I could identify that the art department or somebody with an eye can make up something more exquisite and be easier for them to get to because they could use these tools to do it. But it won't do their vision for them. It'll just make it easier to acquire.
So in like a real world example use case, we can actually break down how the system works. A lot of times we get a script. If we're looking at what scenes can be used in virtual production, we have to work with the art department to figure out what does this thing look like. You know, it could be, depending on the view of the filmmaker and the art department and the production designer, it could be anything, right? So before we can even start to estimate what the cost is of building the environment, schedule the building of the environment, figure out how it's going to fit in an LED wall, figure out the virtual to physical kind of boundary, we have to get artwork. And right now, that artwork generation time can take anywhere between 4 days to 2 weeks, depending on if the concept artist is available, depending on what else is on their plate, depending on how many reviews they can get scheduled on the director's plate to get that looked at and give notes on. Now, with generative AI, you can basically, in the writer's room, come up with concept imagery that can create the visual language of the movie before you even leave the room. Now, it's not going to be the final thing, but you can start to design what these things look like, the mood, the lighting, the characteristics of the environment, and you can get to that point much, much faster than you could before. Then you still have that process of finesse and all the detailing, but to leave the room where all the creatives are being creative with something tangible is a huge productivity booster.
So that's a good point. But not everything is Star Wars, right? There's a lot of movies that are not Star Wars. And where does virtual production play in these films? Well, there's usually not a VFX budget or a level of trust that the VFX supervisor comes with to say, it's going to be okay, it's virtual production, I've got it. I can always fix it if it turns out terrible. It'll cost you, but I can fix it. The local 800, the production designers, they are now conscripting Unreal users and creating work in this space because their job is to take the physical set and integrate it with the digital set. And in Previz and TechViz, the production designer, the art department, they are now taking control. And I want to see this made by somebody when Baz Idowen is moving the bar into the virtual, into the digital. I want to see the budget for the physical go down and the budget for the virtual to go up, right? Because this is the constant debate, where am I going to find the efficiencies? And the secret about virtual production is that it's the insides which you can emulate really well, right? You can do interiors really, really well. You can extend hallways, you can do all sorts of stuff like that. So this really is the domain of the art department, and specifically the integration of the art department with virtual production and the art director. This is their budget. The budget has not evolved yet because the trust is not there. But I think this year is the art department's time. Well, it was going to be until we got this little bump in the road. But I think that the art department should embrace these tools and use them.
They sort of do. I did a film called Hugo where the art department designed the set. Normally they design the set and you just live with it. And it gets either constructed or constructed in the computer and you would shoot around it. And in our case, because I was designing the shot where the boy in the film is going through the train station and all behind the scenes and all that stuff, the length of time, how far he ran, all that started to mean something in terms of the set that is yet to be built. So I took their set, and if I needed longer action, I just extended the hallway. I made it as a double level to get the beats and all the action. So it's the first time that the previs portion informed the set that was ultimately going to be built. And once we liked it, and once Marty liked it, that became now the art department, who they're very good about it. And so they just built the set based on what we altered their original set to be, because it's now specific to the movie, to the scene, to whatever we needed. And so it works very well when you have when everybody collaborates, and again, when no one has an ego, everybody's secure in their job. It's like, fine, I'm building a set for you to use to make the movie better, so I'm happy that you have added some input that would make the scene better. So it works great, actually.
I think that's a really great example of iteration and kind of co-ownership of decision making in some ways between, the art department, seeing what's happening in terms of the production reality of those decisions. Pinar, I'm sure you've noticed, especially with a tool like, using Kubrick, how does that happen when filmmakers come in and maybe aren't proficient with the engine, but you are? What does that handoff look like between, them conveying their vision and you being able to execute on it with the tools?
Absolutely. By the way, before I give an answer, I would like to make one more point that I don't think we have ever lived in an area in time where the desire and demand for extraordinary content has never been greater. And I have heard rumors that circulate. You are the professionals, you have to tell me if it's true or not. But during the filming of Batman and Avatar, that coincided, yes, English, that there was a shortage of VFX artists across the world. Is that correct?
Yes.
So what I wonder is that who's going to make all these films? Who's going to build all these art departments? Who's going to build all these worlds? Will all accountants, business people, and lawyers stop quitting their jobs and become VFX artists? So that is the reason why actually we developed our tool Kubrick. So for those that are not familiar with, Kubrick is the tool that we developed at Seyhan is a tool that streamlines the production of 2.5-dimensional environments for virtual production stages that has several different AIs in it. And accidentally, it's also automatic rotoscoping tool. So that's why I was saying accidentally, because in order to go from 2D to 2.5D, you have to cut pieces and then you have to animate them, the whole drill. So how does the handoff look like? Currently, we're in the process of, by the way, if you guys would like to experience this tool, tomorrow as part of AI on the Lot, we will be at XR Studios in Hollywood, 6700 Santa Monica Boulevard. There will be a demo. Grab Todd or anyone. We have a link. You can register your interest and you can see it in action. So how does the handoff look like? Currently, we're at a closed beta. So we're very hand-picking. We're very careful with which studios we are picking. And we're holding their hands. And we're showing them, because we have developed our own image generation engine that is made not for artists, but for filmmakers. So the way you prompt is slightly different than what you're used to. We're giving them educations, and then we're showing them the quality we can produce, because Gary and I, we're creatives. So if ever we develop a tool, we put the same careful attention in producing quality images as we put in the advancement of our technology. So we're showing our filmmakers that we're in touch with, can you produce this good quality images in our tool? If not, please let us show you how to do that.
I think that handoff is really important, and that training piece, and I know you've mentioned like training and prompt engineering. What are some ways, and after this I'm going to hand off to questions, so everyone get your questions ready. What are ways that you're seeing as we are in the context of where we are in Hollywood at the moment, this potential of fear of like AI taking away jobs? What do you see as the role for training in AI and kind of upskilling and showing how AI fits within existing jobs and maybe are causing these jobs to evolve?
It's going to be okay. Can I see a show of hands? People are afraid of AI taking their jobs. Anyone here? There's one there. Good, good, good. It is going to be okay. Things are going to change. This is disruption. So the role of AI is, what's going to be interesting is when we start getting AI to teach AI, and that's what's about to happen. I mean, I think we talked about this the other day, that this generative AI approach has been happening the last 2 decades. We kind of dropped this top-down approach. Well, here comes the top-down approach, and we're going to start informing some of this generative AI along the way. So that's about to happen. But I think it's so disruptive that it's kind of like being afraid of like the automobile, or oh my God, we shouldn't be going to the moon. I just don't know where to put this. So I think that AI is look, for those of us who are prolific, you're going to be really prolific. For those of you who don't want to use a cell phone, then there's going to be things to do. There's going to be things to do.
Yeah, it's like a feeling amplifier. If you feel confident, you will excel. If you feel inferior,
To sort of answer your question, I think people will be self-taught in AI because they now come with a personal assistant. So if you hire somebody who's an artist of any description, a camera person or whatever, they will have studied and use AI to assist them. And somebody says, well, how would you do this shot? And they do their research. What we used to call research is now going to be that. So I think it's instead of us, the industry, teaching people to use AI, the people themselves would want to do, because for my job, I have to learn how to do it. No one's telling me how to do it. No one's teaching me how to do it. But I now know the value of it because if it saves me time and iterations where I can make it better, because now I have the more time to do quality work, I will do it. And so I think that it's going to behoove everybody to learn how to use, if you're an artist, you have to know how to use Photoshop and all the rest of them. There's going to be all AI built into all these programs, every single one of them, including rotoscoping and everything else is all going to be built into After Effects. And it's incredible what you can do. And then now if you write your own little scripts, you tell AI, how do you write a nuke script to do this? And it tells you.
Editorial timelines are now being introduced, which is, talk about a first cut problem being solved. I mean, have you ever tried to get your first cut of a show done? Oh my God. Now you can hit a button, it'll follow theatrical convention, it'll give you a starting place, and then you can go, well, I don't like this, and I don't like it in this very particular way. I'm gonna put that there, I'm gonna put that there, I'm gonna put that there, I'm gonna put that there.
Well, everybody's first cut is the most depressing thing they've ever described. So
But now
I
it's
think
someone
that
else's
tradition is
first
going to
cut.
continue.
So that's really, I mean, again,
Now you blame the machine.
that's right. And I can't wait to actually go to the machine and say, give me a VFX sequence in the style of Rob Legato. It's going to be great.
Fire that Hewlett Packard. He's no good.
It's hard to kind of see the mid ground and the long term from here, right? Short term, we know it's a productivity booster. Who knows where it's going to go? I think it's important for the people in this room to drive where it's going to go. I think that there are ideas about what we want this industry to look like in 5 or 10 years that we can push this to kind of help realize. For me, I think the personalization aspect of filmmaking is something that is really exciting about what's upcoming. Right now, the streamers make one movie that appeal to 100 million people. I think that as we start to see these tools progress, there is a path in which there are 100 million movies made for 100 million people, where every story is told to the person that it's being told to because of their likes, their interests, their background, the training that their personal AI has done to kind of to make the movie more personal to them. There's a roadmap in which that, there's all sorts of things that needs to kind of make that happen. But I think that, to me, is the exciting part. And you can start to see how some of these tools can evolve to that. And hopefully everyone in this room is kind of realizing that we all need to kind of be part of that transition.
Yeah, I think that's a great way to talk about like the vision of what this can become, right? The optionality that's enabled by AI, not just for creators, but making everyone a creator, or, creators able to build a framework of a world and then let their audience build stories within that world, right? There's a lot more ideas of what format is, and format kind of continuing to evolve to enable co-creation in really interesting ways. I have more questions I would love to ask, but I want to give the chance for the audience to have ask one or two questions. So Lori has a mic. Does anyone have any questions within the audience?
Hi, thank you for today. Can you tell me, how do you feel like the entire disruption of the production side of the entertainment industry is going to mean there's no need for anybody who do set work or anything? I mean, that will go away. In this movement towards total automation, I've been fortunate or not fortunate. I worked in the automotive industry, and we saw automation come in, and we developed all the software to build cars. This is but yet another scene of that same storyline for me.
Shall I? Yeah. After photography was invented, painting didn't go away. After color was introduced, black and white didn't go away. It became a choice. So our choices of expanding our possibility for creation will be immensely vast. But I would love to bring also, I didn't drink the Kool-Aid. I'm very aware of the dangers of normalization of mediocrity that AI can bring us. Because at the end of the day, we will be pushing a button and some options will be given to us. But we somehow collectively seem to agree of what is good content, what is good art, and what is not. There's a reason why certain artworks end up in a gallery and certain are sold in Wednesday afternoon markets. Some pictures make it to the big screen and some don't. So hereby, we will be absolutely advancing our productions, but we will also learn to be careful and understanding about what differentiates human creativity and ingenuity from the constant options that machines give us.
I also think that when we're talking about disruption, we talk about the change. What we're feeling is the change of a medium, right? So in our business, there was a guy who his whole job was he was a floor guy, you know, some local, and that was his big thing, is he made the most beautiful floors for big stages, right? Studio pictures. Now, that person may still work in the future because they will take what they know about textures and floors and patterns and everything and pull that into, because they may have an inclination to be a technologist, right? These are disruptive times. And look, just because the guy was good at floors does not necessarily mean that he's bad at technology, right? I think that we've also seen that technologists are sort of every age, right? And so that we find ourselves able to use these tools even though we were doing something else. So I guess my point is, don't count anyone out who's been doing something one way. Give them the chance to do it another way.
The jobs are exactly the same. They don't change. So somebody knows how to do hair, they're going to do hair on a computer. Somebody knows how to set decorate. You still need the art of where things go and what items they're to. So it's a set decorator. They may be a different person or somebody more computer savvy perhaps, but it's the same role, and somebody's good at it is going to be artistic at it. So it's nothing. There won't be any change in that.
The whole set crew is a creative industry. Everyone on that set is creative in their own sector. I think that when you have an automotive industry that's ripe for automation as opposed to a lot of manual process, you see a lot more disruption. On a film set, everyone, even to the craft services department, is in charge of making decisions about their craft. You can see AI even help step in to help make menus, figure out shopping lists, and do all those kinds of things to make them more productive, but you're not going to replace those people. Those people still need to be in charge of their craft.
Hi, it's a great talk. You mentioned the virtual assistant model, and I'm wondering what you guys are more excited about, like the kind of these brute force tasks, like give me a list of everything that meets these criteria, kind of a thing that they can do really repetitive actions and speed up that process so that I can make the creative decision. So is that like, would that be a good description of what you're excited about in AI, or is it more like targeting creativity directly, right? Like through conceptual blending and the genetic or evolutionary algorithms, kind of just like targeting like that. How can we give this language model a bunch of data so it actually spins up something creative and new?
I think there's both opportunities. You know, if you look at the production pipeline, I think we've mentioned earlier, production itself probably going to be the last thing that gets automated away. Pre-production, post-production are ripe for those kinds of things. Your first example, match move, rotoscoping, those are very manual processes that require a lot of clicking by a person to get to a result. Those things are ripe for automation. But on the flip side, the creative process, it's like if you were reading a script and you can feed that script into a generative AI where every page, every scene comes up with creative imagery around lighting, around scene design, around that. You can read a script now with a mental image, and that might not be your mental image, but at least it gives you something to anchor on. And I think that you have kind of both scenarios in this process, in the full production process.
I think it's all individual for everyone. I'm not looking for the computer to show me something creative, but I am looking for it, in my case, to make my job easier by building a tool. Like if you ever use Unreal or Nuke or any of these things, it's incredibly huge if you can script something. I want to do this repetitive task over and over again. I want to do a particular way. I can't write blueprints in Unreal, and I can't necessarily write Python scripts for that, although it would make my job easier. But now I have a personal assistant who's good at doing that stuff. So I talk into the thing, and it says, give me a script that does this, and it gives me a script that does that. So it's very exciting for somebody like me who has to depend on someone else in the middle of the night when I come up with an idea that I want to try something. Now I have the resource that somebody magnificently built, so that I could use it for that. So everybody's going to be different about whatever their weak points are is what you're going to look to the computer to help you with. And so I think it's anything that you're deficient in or you feel you're deficient in, it will fill up your resume pretty much in terms of what you can accomplish.
Thank you all for being here with us today. Before we close, really quickly, does everyone on the panel have any final thoughts on what you're excited about, what you're looking towards, or advice for the future?
No.
Don't be afraid, because we all know from our experiences that what we fear always comes true. So choose optimism, trust in yourself, find your essence.
It's super easy to just play with one of these tools and just figure out how it works and figure out how it can fold into your life. Don't be afraid of it. You hear about ChatGPT, you hear about this, that, and whatever. Just go sign up and play with it. It's not going to be that scary.
Yeah, I mean, first thing I did was, well, not the first thing, but like the fifth thing I asked ChatGPT to do was tell me how to make a chocolate cake in the style of Donald Trump. And it was hysterical. So
it was full of shit, right?
It was great. It's all about the eggs, folks, isn't it, people? It's all about the eggs. We love the eggs, don't we? Only the best. So my point is that the sandbox for this stuff in production actually is in two places: comedy, right, and children's programming. It's actually a great place to ideate, iterate. You are forgiven. People are not looking for photoreal. Forget the whole photoreal thing. This is a time to actually be in a sandbox to design, right? We go shoot reality if it's really that critical. But you can actually find people who want to direct, produce, and work this way. Then go find those people and go play.
Go play. I think that's a great way to end this panel. Thank you to the Stacked cast for being with us today. And thank you all for being here.